Yeah, sorry, I'm taking up too much time. Oh my gosh, reminiscing is fun. I remember thinking the corduroy of the jacket felt like the right choice. I knew that that color sweater, the bruised lilac, wasn't the most flattering on me.
How easy is it for her to describe the situation or the experience? Was she struggling to find words? Was she struggling to find different ways to express the experience? Not really, right? So even in the beginning, she had to catch herself with Princess Diaries. Oh, well, it's taking too much time. I'm sorry. When somebody's comfortable with explaining concrete and physical specific things that way in a lot of different nuances, that's clearly someone that probably has S at the top 3, probably not S inferior.
17 years old when we made this. And so I hadn't met as many people yet. And so I knew Gary Marshall was really special and I knew Julie Andrews was really special. But now sitting here watching this from this point of view, they're 2 of the most magical people I have ever met. This was the film that changed my life. Like, it's so weird to watch it. I haven't seen this movie in maybe 20 years. And I'm a little bit speechless with this one. It's very emotional to see it.
That was a great example of explaining the context to spell out why it was meaningful to her, and then also saying, now with more experiences that I have, I'm looking back on it and seeing some new connections or meaning from it. I like this example also of a sensing preference too, because I think people think sensing means you just talk about numbers and details and facts and stuff in this very like boring way. But in this example, we can see like she is bringing up a lot of detail, but it's still very personal. It's very interesting. It's very meaningful. It's a lot of like fun facts and connections and what was special to her. This is a great example of how like any personality type can be deep and interesting to talk with.
I think it's interesting. She talks a lot about sensing details, but she does also layer it, infuse it with some intuitive descriptions.
That purple on the top, so much of this movie is about a woman's bloom at a stage in her life where women are often told that we're going too dull, but actually she opens and learns more. And so the color palette in this movie was so important.
Talking about the details again, but she can get intuitive. She can get into that concepts and the meaning. It's like, this color purple is really important. The color purple represents the blossoming of the character.
Culture is also a scientific thing, like in a petri dish. Like you drop something in a petri dish and you watch it develop.
Okay.
So for me, the idea that who I'm going to be, if I'm lucky enough to be a woman experiencing age in her 80s, I'm building her right now. And I get really excited about that. And that it doesn't mean you ever land anywhere. It just means you're always developing.
It seems very natural for her to bring up the concrete experience of things, but then immediately she has a lot of fun. This is what it's making me think of. These are some new connections that I'm making from it. This is why it was meaningful. Some analogies or some other patterns. All of these things, they all point to her using SI and NE somewhere in her personality type. Those are her perceiving functions. It's just pretty clear all over the place.
Yeah, but for some people they're like, why isn't it OC? So there's a lot of examples again about the specific details that she's recalling of her personal experience. When it's sensing for an introverted function, so it's a function that it's personal to the person. That's why it's introverted. So sensing experiences that I have kept because they have had meaning or impact to me. And so that's why she's talking a lot about her personal experience. And she's not actually ever explaining it in the broad sense of the experience and trying to explain the experience so that you can bask in it or almost be able to see the full image picture of it so you can flesh out the picture. She's really playing out the little moments that were special or meaningful to her. This is not like the ultimate telling for SI, but with SI and E, there's a lot of, this was interesting to me, this was interesting to me, this detail was interesting to me, this detail was interesting to me.
It made me think about all these other things.
So it's like something that I find interesting, something that is subjective to me, that caught my attention. It was information concrete information or experiences that stood out to me specifically.
I'm not big on holding things with regret. My regrets are for like if I've been stressed and I let that impact someone else. Like I save my regret for that. But in terms of outfits, like whatever, it's all fun, it's great. And even if it's terrible, it's still kind of great. I wound up on the worst dress list. I remember going to visit my grandmother and she like saved all my press clippings and she'd cut out my worst dress list. See, like even when it's terrible, it's great.
Even if it was a mistake, it's just an experience. It's okay. There is a openness.
Optimism.
It's not what we saw with Aubrey Plaza, where it's a lot of over worrying about we're trying to prepare in advance for certain things to be a certain way. Here it's sort of like, I don't know. It's hard to say that anything was really a mistake. Hey, even if it was horrible, it happened. You know, that's sort of cool.
How much weight have you lost to get into this shape right now?
You did not just ask me that
No, I'm just
question.
saying, you're like,
what a forward
whoa.
young man you are. My goodness.
I'm
How
sorry.
much weight?
I'm not saying you needed to lose weight. I'm just saying that you look.
I've worked very hard to become Selena Kyle.
I know you have. All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry if I offended you.
You didn't at all. I'm just messing with you.
Thanks, Anne.
If we're looking at any functions, that's probably functions that can adjust to the outside world very quickly, very able to take on a lot more different personas. How comfortable can she adjust and jump into something differently in the outside world, adjust outside stuff, and being comfortable with it, right? Not like being
Yes.
like, this is uncomfortable. She's comfortable with that extroverted way of dealing with situations.
All you can ever do is be present with somebody and be supportive of them and uplift them, right? We're made very nervous by the idea that we're doing it wrong. I get made so nervous by it. It's a really, I think we all maybe have a loud critical voice in our heads. I don't know where it comes from. And that's one of the other great things about aging is you get more time to speak to that voice. You get more time to heal it.
She's quite aware a lot of like the emotional impact of things. So she's not like always expressing her feelings, but she does take note a lot of how like emotions are part of the experience.
She brought up the thing of like, what else can you do in this situation? You know, you want to be supportive, you want to uplift people, you want to do this for people.
I think one thing to note with Anne Hathaway is how much she puts into creating a feeling when she's describing something, especially when extroverted feeling is trying to express like an idea or a story. You'll see them kind of like bringing in and changing the persona a little to kind of magnify, create the feeling. You see her when she was talking to the lady, you can really see how she starts kind of almost not exaggerating, but making it a bigger emotion. Just want to be kinder to myself. And she's like, if I was to get to turn 80, I would be so lucky.
A key word that comes to mind for me is contribute. So with Effie, they are trying to contribute to the outside feeling. So that's what the motivation is, right? So that's where the extra, maybe being more animated or whatever is. The focus is on contributing to the outside feeling, and that can create that, changing the persona to create the feeling thing.
I have a much better sense of how I like to do things. And I also am really excited about pursuing my own take on things. And especially not because of a number that exists out in the world that someone else has a feeling about. I'm interested in my own feelings about it.
We're all starting to say, wait a minute.
Hang on.
Hang on.
Hang on. What about what I think? What about what I think about what I want to do?
I love that.
Because
I love that.
I don't know how you feel, but
You know, other people are saying this, you know, age means this, but why does it need to be like that? Sort of questioning it for herself and going, well, what do I think about this? I need to bring that to the table too. She's not like blurting out her honest, critical, harsh thinking about things, but more going, I do need to give some permission to myself to think for myself about what does this mean for me. And
Yeah, there's a lot of awareness for outside stuff. Like people say this, people like assume this. This is kind of what is the expectation from people in the outside. So there's definitely like a lot of outside awareness, and you can almost hear in her what she's learned, that her journey has been to almost like understand how to separate herself from that a little bit.
I think, and the question is, and why would you assume we wouldn't be in it? Why was it ever assumed that we couldn't be in it? There was this perception that there was going to be a cliff, and that cliff was a really young age. The world's changed since then. And then I'm really excited for someone younger than me to define it for themselves too.
When ESJs are looking at their own perspective, it starts to fix into like more of this SINE way of looking at things. It's like, yes, that is the status quo. Yes, I believe and I understand that that's what exists or existed before, but then it also goes into this NE of wanting to challenge it and going, why not something new? Why not create something new? Yes, it exists, but let's also make room for new things.
We've seen it a lot with clients. ESJs, they like NE a decent amount.
A lot of it, yeah.
Like it's actually pretty common for them to type as
ENPs.
ENPs, because when they read about NE, they're like,
Yes,
I
it's me.
love that. I do that all the time. They really relate to it. That's something that I think is really cool to appreciate about ESJs, is there's the stereotype that all SJs are really rigid. But really, if you talk with ESJs, they actually have this really like reflective, like a little bit more open side of them that is really special to appreciate.
Because even the ones that don't turn out the way you thought it was going to, you learn something from it. And so they all wind up being incredibly valuable.
Outwardly, how does SINE show up differently in INPs versus ESJs? INPs, the NESI, the bouncing back and forth, it's very much focused
And
on...
then the next time I see him is minutes before the cameras are rolling and we're shooting the first scene, which is where we meet each other.
Do you see how Ali's logical side, he is not at all calibrating to extroverted thinking logic. Extroverted thinking